Heading into week 4, what quarterback, what tight end, what defense can you trust? What defense do you grab from waivers? Who's going to win you the week? Last week, the defenses popped off. We had like 27 blocked field goals. We had like 12 touchdown returns, 2 of them from the Vikings defense. So we're going to be breaking down in tier list each of those positions. Quarterback, tight end, defense. Smash the subscribe button, please. Appreciate every single one of y'all support as a small creator. Lamar Jackson. I haven't seen Monday Night Football yet, but I think the Baltimore Ravens should remain in S tier. They take on the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead. Now, the Chiefs defense is tough, which I honestly think might force Lamar Jackson to run. So I'm honestly fine keeping Lamar. He's obviously in S tier. It's just a matter of between him and Josh Allen, which one should be higher. Josh Allen takes on the New Orleans Saints. I think this sounds, oh my God, Josh Allen and the Bills are going to have 40 points. But at this point in the season, that doesn't excite me for Josh Allen specifically. It excites me for James Cook. I think James Cook might be the one benefiting from how bad the Saints are rather than Josh Allen. I think this S tier is fair. Jaden Daniels, we expect him to be back from injury hopefully this week. And the Commanders, a pretty good matchup versus Atlanta when the Panthers just held them to 30-0. So I think Jaden Daniels, if back, will bounce back in a big way. If Daniels is not back, I think Mariota is streamable and somewhere down in D tier. Caleb Williams will be rising later on in this video. Now, you'll also notice that there's no A tier, it's A minus. I still think we're going to retain that. This is the week 3 tier list that we're going in and modifying. Jalen Hurts is going to probably stay where he is. We're going to have to bump him up one spot, though, back ahead of Patrick Mahomes. This is rest of season. This is also accounting for not just week 4, but rest of season. Mahomes had a bad performance. Wasn't as good of a game. They kept kicking field goals. They couldn't convert touchdowns. Hollywood was irrelevant. Kelsey was irrelevant. And Jalen Hurts had a big passing game as well as the rushing touchdown. So Hurts has to come back up to QB4. I think this is still solid. Now, whether or not Mahomes gets to stay in A tier, not after the performance I just saw, that tough matchup versus Baltimore, where they're going to have to air it out. And honestly, I think that means that Mahomes should stay in A tier. It's a bold take. That's what we're about right here. Kyler Murray I had at the top of B tier heading into week 3. And it was kind of disappointing. Kyler Murray has not been giving you the touchdown passes that you would like. Like, look at him. QB 14, QB 20, QB 13. The floor is there. He's averaging 30 rushing yards per game, but now James Conner's out. What does that mean? Does that mean that Kyler Murray keeps the ball some more on some goal line runs for the quarterback? Hopefully, but I have to bump Kyler Murray down these rankings. Even though rest of season, I still think Kyler Murray should be somewhere, I'm going to keep him here just for rest of season. But in terms of week 4 alone, I'm a little bit scared. Tough matchup versus the Seattle defense. Seattle defense is one of those defenses that won you your week in week 3. Baker Mayfield is in B tier. This guy's passing touchdown rate is high. This guy's passing touchdown rate is very, very good. 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown. Also, he's averaging more rushing yards than Kyler Murray. So the floor is there, and the passing touchdown rate is even higher. Now, Godwin could be back. Evans could be gone. I like Baker where he is. Tough matchup versus Philly. Bo Nix, the Broncos. Now, Bo Nix and the Broncos. Bo Nix hasn't looked good 2 out of 3 weeks. They take on the Bengals. Carson Wentz had 2 passing touchdowns. Bo Nix will be just fine. Honestly, I think Bo Nix has to bump up 2 B tier just for this week alone. And I think C tier is solid as well with Kyler and Fields. Now, would I rather have Caleb Williams starting or Kyler Murray this week? The answer is going to surprise some people. I think I would rather have Caleb Williams this week. And maybe even rest of season 2, Caleb Williams takes on the Las Vegas Raiders. And Caleb Williams just had his best game as a Bear. Luther Burden is more involved. Caleb Williams has, look at him, QB 9, QB 14, QB 1, 29 points, 4 passing touchdowns. In terms of rushing, we saw the rushing upside in week 1, and we haven't seen it since. I think it's a good matchup versus the Raiders here. I think Caleb Williams has to be my QB 8 coming into this week. Drake May also has to rise up these rankings. The rushing upside alone is enticing. We'll see what Jared Goff does on Monday Night Football if he can replicate his success. Fields is impossible to rank. Now, it's a good matchup for Fields and the Jets versus Miami. Is Fields even going to play? Is he even healthy? I don't know. So I reserve the right to change. Dak Prescott, kind of disappointing. Very disappointing. Herbert, he's okay. Like, in terms of Herbert, you're really relying on no rushing upside because you're not going to get any. You had some the first 2 weeks, and back to reality week 3, you're relying on passing touchdowns. Week 1 and 2, the passing touchdowns were there. Week 3, it wasn't. Now, Amari and Hampton, Najee has the torn Achilles. What does that do? Maybe they pass the ball more. Maybe you get some more design screens for Hampton. I think Herbert is just fine where he is. I kind of like what this D tier looks like. In terms of E tier, all of these guys are kind of people you don't want to be starting no matter what. Penix has to drop down these rankings. Lawrence and Stroud, I wouldn't want to start either of these guys. Honestly, I'd rather bet on Bryce Young's rushing upside than some of these guys below him, which are more pocket passer type players. Some people missing from the rankings like Brock Purdy. If Brock Purdy's back and healthy, I think I would immediately rather have him than Trevor than Stroud. I know Love had a bad game. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt as he gels with his new deep threat, Matthew Golden. I think these quarterback rankings are pretty fair. Incorporating rest of season, incorporating just specifically to week 4. Sam Darnold has a good matchup versus the Cardinals on Thursday Night Football. Honestly, if you're not starting one of these guys in D tier or higher, we got 5, 7, 10. That's 14 names. If you're out there, and you don't have one of the top 14 quarterbacks for the week, your best bet is probably Love, Purdy, and maybe even Geno. Because if we take a look at Geno Smith, in a game where the Commanders dominated almost all aspects of this game, Geno Smith still came out there with Trey Tucker, the deep threat, 3 passing touchdowns, all to Trey Tucker. Salvaged his day with 26 fantasy points. Might be one of the better streaming tight ends versus the Bears, but, no mobility upside. So this is the week 4 QB rankings. Jake Brown and Carson Wentz, they'd both be in F tier, so I'm not going to put them anywhere. There's an argument that Wentz could be in E tier. Let's wait and see. It's because he has Jefferson and Addison coming back, and he likes Hawkinson. I wouldn't be surprised if Wentz comes out there and throws for another two touchdowns. Don't be surprised about that. But I'm still, he's probably down here. I'd rather have Wentz, to be honest, than Penix, but that's where I would keep the rankings. There it is. Let's go look at tight ends. In terms of tight ends, I'm not sure that anything really has to change. Brock Bowers, do you put him behind McBride now that McBride got the receiving touchdown? Honestly, no. I still think rest of season and, week 4 specifically, I think the S tier ranking is good. Warren had a down game. Tucker Kraft had a down game. Kelsey, he's kind of just been mid, and he's been mid all season. People are saying, oh, why was Kelsey so bad? What are you talking about? Like, why was he so bad? It's not like he's been good the first couple of weeks. Compare Kelsey's week 3 to week 1 and week 2, and you'll notice they are actually very, very similar. He actually had more targets in week 3 than the first 2 games. He had the same amount of receptions, just less receiving yards, and didn't have the touchdown that he had in week 1. So I honestly think that these top rankings should be remaining pretty much the same. In a game where the Saints were dominated, Juwan Johnson also showed off his floor. There's a chance Juwan Johnson rises up to A tier, and he might do it quick. Now, I haven't seen Laporta on Monday Night Football. Reserve the right to change that. Zach Ertz and Marcus Mariota. The last thing I heard about Zach Ertz was that he was dropping a Marcus Mariota touchdown throw. Let's see how he ended in week 3. There it is. 3 catches, 3 targets, 38 yards. Seems like a floor game for Zach Ertz. I think he's fairly ranked. Now, one person has to rise all the way up to the top of S tier. You might be mind blown. Yeah, it's Jake Ferguson. Now, CeeDee Lamb seems to be out 4 to 6 weeks. Or a week. I mean, the reports on this are very confusing on how long he's out. Listen, the last 2 weeks he's been averaging 13 targets. And when CeeDee Lamb was gone, 13 catches, 82 yards. This is without touchdowns. 20 points per game over the last 2 weeks. Ferguson should be tight end 1 coming into week 4. The Cowboys also have a tough matchup with Green Bay. Expect them to have to pass the ball, play from behind. Ferguson, all the way up, leaping up 3 tiers, kind of insane. Hawkinson also had a solid day with Carson Wentz. I think with Wentz, who likes to target quarterbacks, you probably have Hawkinson up here in the rankings at the top of C tier. And I think I'd rather have Hawkinson than Kelsey coming into a good matchup versus the Pittsburgh Steelers that the Vikings have. And Njoku and Fannin. Fannin is not on this list. Fannin should be on this list. He was last week. Fannin is actually going to be still ahead of Njoku in terms of my week 4 rankings and rest of season. So Fannin would be right here. Hunter Henry, you might think is a big time riser as well. I'm not buying it. I still am not buying what Hunter Henry is laying down. Now, taking a look, this guy was a true week winner in week 3. 29 points, tight end 1, 11 targets, 8 catches, but he had 2 touchdowns. Don't be deceived by the touchdown rate. Now, I'd rather have Hunter Henry than Fannin and Njoku in week 4. That's a pretty fair ranking right there. Goddard didn't do anything good besides the touchdown catch. Only had the 1 catch. It was like a 30-yard touchdown. And really, if you're starting any of these guys in D tier, you're not too happy. You can see we have 9 names here. We have 14 tight ends all the way through C tier. You don't want one of the top 14? You're streaming. Now, who are you streaming for week 4 specifically? Well, Isaiah Likely might be back, and if Isaiah Likely is back, then it might be worth taking a look at Isaiah Likely and the Baltimore Ravens in a tough matchup versus Kansas City, because I think Mark Andrews is still going to be a non-factor. I know you have Loveland injured. Strange and Okonkwo both had decent days. I think I'd rather honestly have both of them than Freiermuth. Cade Otton, nothing crazy there. Evan Ingram, still not too impressed. Kincaid should be ranked, and Kincaid should be honestly ahead. You're not going to know who's getting the ball, whether it's the Bills receivers or whether it's the Bills tight ends. I'd probably have him still behind both Browns tight ends, but Kincaid is a name to keep an eye out on. Another name that should be ranked, and he should be down here in D tier, ahead of Loveland, ahead of Andrews, is Oronde Gadsden. Keep an eye out on this guy. He's a stud. Go grab him from waivers. That is the week 4 tight end ranking. Let's go to defense to win your week. In terms of defense, we did a very good job in week 3. A lot of the defenses we recommended you to get scored some touchdowns. So it was a good week. Seattle being up there, Commanders being one of the top defenses as well. In terms of this week, we're going to have to start off from scratch. And we're looking at the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills are the top defense of the week. They take on the New Orleans Saints in a very, very favorable matchup. So I like the Bills up there in S tier. The Detroit Lions take on the Cleveland Browns. This is also a good matchup. The Packers basically held them scoreless until they choked in the 4th quarter. Speaking of the Packers defense, it's a good matchup versus the Cowboys again on Sunday Night Football. Expect Parsons to wreak havoc. Honestly, Lions versus Browns should be an S tier up there with the Bills versus Saints in a good matchup. I still think the Packers defense is going to drop down to A tier just for this week. Now, the Seattle Seahawks defense performed very, very well, above expectations in week 3. Thursday Night Football matchup with the Cardinals. No James Conner. It's Trey Benson season. Seattle Seahawks, people are going to have the Seattle Seahawks. They have them ranked as the 16th overall defense for the week. I still think the Seahawks are going to be an A-tier defense for me. They have 9 points week 1. Oh my God, they're averaging 14 or 15 points given up per game. And I mean, this team they're averaging 2 interceptions a game, about 3 sacks a game. This defense is good. I don't care who they play on a short week. I still think Seattle is one of the top defenses of the week. The Texans take on the Titans, and the Texans, they play dirty. They should be a good defense. You got the Patriots taking on the Panthers. Honestly, I'm not too fond of that matchup, but it will be one of these bottom tier type defenses. Broncos taking on the Bengals. Jake Browning looks so bad. I think that's an S tier defense for me. But they do have good offensive weapons. Maybe anything can happen on Monday Night Football. I'm still going to have the Lions and Bills ahead of those teams. The Packers. We already mentioned them. The Vikings take on the Steelers. The Vikings scored 2 defensive touchdowns. You got to have them up here in A tier for certain. Who else do we have? We got the San Francisco 49ers in a good matchup. The 49ers take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's not really enticing. Usually when we get to B tier, these are the defenses that you're going to want to stream. You're not super excited about, but it's worth monitoring. I'd rather have the Chargers. So if we take a look at the Chargers, I mean, the Patriots played the Panthers. The Chargers played the Giants. I think I'd rather have the Chargers in that matchup. The Chiefs have a tough game versus the Ravens. Take them off immediately. The Falcons cannot be trusted. The Buccaneers play the Eagles. The Eagles play the Bucs and Baker Mayfield. Now, this is where things get tough. Who else can you trust? Do you trust the Dolphins versus the Jets? No. No, you cannot. You can't. Eagles versus Bucs, I would rather have Philly. Even though Baker Mayfield could throw for 4 touchdowns. But that's why it is in B tier, coming in as the defense number 11. We need one more defense. We only need 12 defenses to be ranked for the week. I'm trying to look for a game that looks enticing. Rams versus the Colts. Commanders versus Falcons. The Falcons just dropped 0 points. We're going to throw the Commanders in here at C tier. Now, other teams that I would consider, maybe the Bears versus the Raiders. The Bears defense looked okay against the Cowboys. Held them to a minimum amount of points. Really, I think that's all the defenses you guys need to consider. Those are the top 12 coming in to week number 4. There it is. There's the video. There's the rankings. Please show support. On and off.